It usually begins with something reasonable. Can you quickly look at this? You're already here. Could you help? You're good at this. You say yes without thinking. Not because you're weak, because you're competent. This is the mistake most people make when they try to understand what happens next. They assume the problem is manipulation, or bad intent, or someone taking advantage. It isn't. The mechanism is quieter. The moment you say yes, something structural shifts. Not in the other person, in the frame. That first yes doesn't cost much time. It doesn't feel binding. It doesn't register as a decision. But it does something else. It establishes precedent. From that point on, your availability is no longer a choice. It's a pattern. This is how will gets hijacked, not through force, but through micro-consent.
The workplace is the perfect environment for this because it rewards reliability. Calm people, capable people, those who don't overreact. If you handle things smoothly, you become the safe surface. Requests don't land on you because you're easy. They land because you're stable. And stability creates containment. You don't push back. You don't dramatize. So the system learns something simple. Pressure can move here. At first, it feels flattering. You're trusted. You're in the loop. You're dependable. But slowly, something else forms. An access ledger. Not written, not spoken, just remembered. Who said yes last time? Who didn't resist? Who handled it well? Each small favor adds a line. You don't feel it happening because nothing feels wrong in the moment. You're not being ordered, you're being asked.
And because the ask is small, refusal feels disproportionate. This is where identity drift begins. You're no longer just doing your job. You're the one who helps, the one who fills gaps, the one who doesn't mind. The requests grow, but not dramatically. A little more often, a little less notice, a little more assumed. No one renegotiates the terms. They don't need to. The negotiable frame already closed with the first yes. You start noticing the cost later. You stay longer without planning to. Your own work gets pushed to the edge of the day. You carry unfinished tasks home in your head. Not because anyone demanded it, because backing out now would feel like withdrawal. The pressure isn't external, it's internalized. You feel the need to stay consistent with who you've been. This is where people misread themselves.
They think, why can't I just say no? They assume a lack of confidence. But the problem isn't confidence. It's jurisdiction. You quietly handed it over. Each yes created a reaction receipt, proof that the request was acceptable. Once those receipts exist, refusal doesn't feel neutral anymore. It feels like reversal, like disruption, like you're taking something back. That's why even good workplaces produce this effect. No villains required, just sequence. By the time you notice the weight, it's already accumulated. You don't feel angry, you feel slow. You don't feel exploited, you feel obligated. Not that someone controls you, but that your will is no longer clean. It's pre-committed. That's the moment sovereignty slips. What makes this difficult to see is that nothing feels imposed. There is no moment where someone crosses a clear line. No demand, no ultimatum. Everything stays polite. That politeness is what keeps the mechanism invisible. But something has. The system has learned where pressure can land. And once a system learns that, it doesn't need intention. It runs on memory. This is why the second request feels different from the first. The words might be the same. The tone might even be softer.
but your body responds faster. You feel the answer forming before you decide. A quiet pre-commitment, a sense that refusal would now require justification. That's not imagination. That's structure. The first yes didn't obligate you to the task. It obligated you to consistency. And consistency is one of the strongest internal pressures humans experience. Not because it's moral,
because it stabilizes identity. Once you've acted in a certain way, your nervous system starts protecting that version of you. Reliable, helpful, easy to work with. That identity becomes something you maintain, not something you chose. This is where people misunderstand will. They think will is a single decision, a moment of courage, a clear refusal. It isn't. Will is cumulative. It's shaped by the sequence of what you allow without pause. Each small yes narrows the range of future no's. Not externally, internally. You don't think, I can't say no. You think, it would be strange if I did. That thought is the lock closing. From here, escalation doesn't need to be aggressive. It just needs to be incremental. The request becomes slightly more time-consuming, then slightly less optional, then slightly more assumed. No one announces the change. There's no meeting, no renegotiation. The structure simply updates. And because you never explicitly agreed to the new terms, you don't feel wronged. You feel responsible. That responsibility shows up somatically. You notice it in how you sit at your desk, in how often your attention is split, in how your own priorities slide to the end of the day. You're not overwhelmed. You're allocated. Your internal space is no longer neutral. It's pre-filled with obligations you didn't consciously accept. This is why competent people are especially vulnerable. Not because they lack boundaries, but because they solve problems quickly. Quick solutions prevent friction, and friction is the only thing that forces renegotiation. Without friction, the system keeps assigning. This is the hidden cost of being easy to work with. Ease removes checkpoints, and without checkpoints, roles drift. You don't notice the drift because it feels reasonable at every step. That's the most dangerous part. Nothing about this feels like a mistake while it's happening. It only becomes visible later when you try to reclaim time or attention and feel resistance. Not from others, from yourself. You hesitate. You rehearse. You soften. That hesitation is the signal that your will is no longer clean. It's burdened by precedent. This is where people often get angry at the wrong thing. They blame the environment. They blame the person who keeps asking. They blame themselves for being too nice. But none of that touches the mechanism. The mechanism is structural compliance. And because you never recorded the transaction, you can't point to where it changed. You just feel the outcome. Slower thinking, lower autonomy, a quiet sense of being behind on your own life. This is the true accumulation, not exhaustion, not resentment, but the gradual loss of authorship over your actions. That's what makes this so unsettling. That's the moment you realize, if this continues, every future choice will feel heavier than it should. And once you see that clearly, there's no way to ignore it. Something has to interrupt the sequence. Not emotionally, structurally. What makes this loss of authorship hard to confront is that it still feels voluntary. No one is forcing your hand. You are still technically choosing. But choice under precedent is not the same as free action. It's a selection from a narrowed field. Each time you say yes early, the field contracts. Not dramatically, quietly. You don't feel trapped, you feel predictable. Once others can anticipate your response, they don't need to persuade you. They simply activate the pattern. This is why requests begin to arrive already shaped around your compliance. They're phrased to fit who you've been. They assume availability. They bypass negotiation. By the time the ask reaches you, it's already halfway decided. That's the point where will stops initiating and starts confirming. You notice it when you try to imagine saying no.
Not the consequences, the motion itself. The refusal feels awkward before it feels reasonable. You can sense the friction it would create, not externally, internally. Your body resists the break in pattern. That resistance is not fear, it's inertia. Inertia built from repetition. This is why people often misdiagnose the problem as confidence. They tell themselves they need to be firmer, clearer, more assertive. But assertion doesn't restore authorship once the frame has shifted. It only creates tension inside a structure that already expects compliance. What's actually missing is not courage, it's sovereignty. The ability to act without checking who you've been for permission. And that ability erodes slowly when every small decision is made in reference to precedent. You begin to feel behind on your own intentions.
Your workday fills before you choose what matters. Your attention fragments across obligations that didn't originate with you. Nothing catastrophic happens, but nothing feels clean anymore. This is the accumulation point most people never articulate. Not exhaustion, not resentment, but the quiet sense that your actions are no longer authored in real time. They're echoes, responses to past agreements, reenactments of earlier yeses. And once you recognize that pattern clearly, something becomes unavoidable. If the sequence continues uninterrupted, your future choices will become heavier than necessary. Not because you lack capacity, but because your will is being spent before you arrive. And once a sequence reaches that point, only timing, not intensity, can reverse it. That's the moment the system becomes visible.
And once the sequence becomes visible, interruption becomes the only meaningful move left. This is why thinkers like Machiavelli paid so much attention to precedent. Not because people are cruel, but because once a pattern is allowed, it no longer needs force. At this point, the pattern no longer feels external. It feels atmospheric. You enter the day already angled toward agreement. Your attention pre-bends around anticipated requests. You don't ask what you want to do first. You ask what will be expected. That subtle reorientation is the real cost. Your will hasn't vanished. It has been scheduled in advance. Every small yes from the past stands in front of the present moment, shaping what seems reasonable now. Choice still exists, but it arrives constrained, pre-negotiated by earlier compliance. This is why the weight is hard to name. Nothing dramatic is happening. No one is crossing a visible line, yet authorship is thinning. You respond more than you initiate. You confirm more than you decide. Your days fill themselves. When action starts arriving already shaped, freedom becomes theoretical. You are still moving, but the direction is no longer originating here. That is the final accumulation. Not pressure, not an obligation, but the quiet displacement of where decisions begin now. Once the sequence becomes visible, there's an instinct most people fall into. They try to reclaim control with force. They wait until they're tired enough to justify resistance, until irritation sharpens their tone, until refusal feels earned. By then, everything is heavier than it needs to be. You're no longer correcting a pattern, you're pushing against momentum. That's why it costs you so much energy. The real lever was never strength.
It was timing. What matters is not how firmly you say no, but how early you interrupt the sequence. The decisive moment doesn't arrive when you're overwhelmed. It arrives much earlier, before obligation forms. It's subtle, a small internal shift, a quiet lean toward agreement, the thought that precedes words. I guess I can. That is the last moment where your will is fully intact. Miss it, and something changes. You're no longer choosing from a neutral position. You're choosing in reference to what's already been established. From that point on, Every response is shaped by precedent. This is why boundaries feel ineffective when they're treated as emotional defenses. Defense assumes attack. It assumes hostility. It assumes justification is required. But nothing hostile happened. What happened was structural.
So the correction must also be structural. This is not about asserting yourself. It's about interrupting automatic compliance before it hardens into obligation. The Stoics understood this distinction clearly. As Epictetus observed, it is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Disturbance doesn't begin when the request is made. It begins when the judgment forms that agreement is expected. Once that judgment settles, refusal becomes charged. Before it settles, refusal is simply information. That's the difference between early interruption and late defense. Early interruption barely registers. Late defense feels personal. So the goal is not to manage discomfort, it's to prevent it from forming. What follows is not a mindset.
It's a filtration protocol, a way of deciding what enters your jurisdiction before it occupies your internal space. Not rules, a sequence. Before any words leave your mouth, notice what happens inside. The readiness to agree, the impulse to be useful, the reflex to smooth the interaction. That impulse is not generosity, it's pattern activation. Once you can feel the pre-yes, you've located the entry point, not a refusal. Time. A pause breaks momentum. Even a breath creates distance between impulse and action. Speed is how patterns replicate themselves. Slowing restores optionality. This is not hesitation, it's containment. Explanation reopens negotiation. I'm busy invites rearrangement. I'll try invites follow-up. I usually don't invites exception. Structure holds when language is neutral.
I can't take that on. That won't work for me. No story, no justification. This isn't coldness, it's clarity. This is the pivot most people avoid. That's something you'll need to handle. I'm not available for that. No counteroffer, no emotional padding. This is not rejection, it's jurisdiction correction. You are returning responsibility to where it originated. Discomfort will appear here, not from the other person, from inside you. The urge to soften, to reassure, to repair the image. That urge is the approval tax. It's the cost you've been paying to preserve an outdated frame. Don't pay it. Silence is not aggression. Stillness is not rudeness. This is the system recalibrating. Pushback is rarely pressure. It's inertia.
But you've done it before. It's just this once. It'll be quick. Those are not arguments. They're echoes of the old access ledger. The ledger updates quietly. Not when you explain, not when you justify, only when access is denied early and cleanly. Each unnegotiated pause rewrites the record. Each calm refusal closes an old line. Nothing needs to be announced. The system reads the change automatically. Stay still. You don't need to win. You need to remain unchanged. Most people undo their corrections here. They add a follow-up message. They explain later. They smooth the emotional residue. That reopens the frame. Correction does not require closure. The interaction can end incomplete. What happens next tells you everything. Some people adjust immediately. Requests become cleaner, less frequent, more deliberate. Others stop asking. Not because you were unkind, but because access has been revised. That's not punishment. That's environmental sorting. Systems reorganize themselves around where friction appears early. And internally, something else changes. Your attention returns to neutral. Decisions regain speed. You stop carrying half-formed obligations in your head. There is no rush of empowerment, no surge of confidence, just lightness. That's how you know correction works. Not because you feel stronger, but because nothing is dragging on you anymore. This is sovereignty experienced indirectly, not as dominance, as absence of load. To test this in the real world, don't monitor how you feel. Monitor sequence. For the next week, observe one thing only: how often you interrupt the pre-yes. Not whether the other person agrees.
Not whether the interaction feels smooth, just whether agreement comes automatically or consciously. Notice how many requests dissolve when you don't rush to accept them. That disappearance is not coincidence. It's the system learning that access is no longer guaranteed. When jurisdiction is protected early, nothing needs to be reclaimed later. Your will stops being spent in advance, and action begins again where it always should have, with you. What usually surprises people is how little resistance actually appears. They expect confrontation. They expect damaged relationships. They expect consequences. Most of the time, none of that happens. Because the system was never held in place by force. It was held in place by momentum. When momentum is interrupted early, there is nothing to fight. This is why over-explaining is such a reliable failure mode. Explanation gives the other person something to work with. It invites problem solving. It reopens the negotiable frame. "I'm busy this week" becomes, "What about next week?" "I can't right now" becomes, "When would be better?" What feels polite is actually permissive. The structure doesn't change, it just reschedules itself. This is also why reassurance undermines correction. "I'm happy to help later." "I don't mind, just not today." Those phrases keep the access ledger open. They tell the system the door is still unlocked. Correction requires something more precise: finality without hostility. Another common failure mode is delayed guilt. The interaction ends. You held the line. And then, hours later, the discomfort arrives. You replay the moment. You imagine how it landed. You feel the urge to clean it up. That urge is the old pattern trying to restore itself. If you act on it, sending a follow-up message, softening your position, you teach the system something critical. Resistance is temporary. And temporary resistance doesn't change structure. It only adds friction. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. A calm, early interruption repeated a few times does more than a single dramatic stand ever could. The environment learns very quickly. Requests become more carefully formed. They arrive with clearer ownership. Sometimes they don't arrive at all. This is not because people suddenly became considerate. It's because the cost-benefit calculation shifted. Access is no longer assumed. That shift is what restores sovereignty in practice, not by asserting dominance, but by removing ambiguity. You may notice a strange internal reaction during this phase. Space. Moments in your day that are no longer pre-filled. Decisions that don't come with background noise. A reduction in mental drag. At first, this space can feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. When you've lived inside obligation for a long time, neutrality can feel like emptiness. That's another place people sabotage themselves. They rush to fill the space. They volunteer. They reinsert themselves. They say yes reflexively just to feel useful again. This is not generosity. It's withdrawal discomfort. The system you were part of hasn't disappeared. It has simply stopped leaning on you. That absence can feel like loss if your identity was partly built around being needed. The work is not just saying no. It's tolerating the absence of a role. You are no longer the automatic stabilizer. no longer the default helper, no longer the predictable yes. That doesn't make you difficult. It makes you unassigned. And being unassigned is what allows authorship to return. From here, choice becomes clean again. You help when you decide to help. You engage when you want to engage. Your actions originate in the present moment, not in precedent. This is the opposite of withdrawal. It's precision. You're not less cooperative. You're more intentional. People who matter adjust. Systems that relied on quiet compliance reorganize. Nothing dramatic announces the change. There is no confrontation phase, no victory moment, just a gradual lightening. Your calendar stops filling itself.
Your attention stays where you put it. Your body exits interactions without residue. That residue, the heaviness, the delay, the fog, was never emotional weakness. It was structural cost, paid. When the cost is removed, clarity returns naturally. This is why correction feels quieter than people expect. There is no rush, no empowerment surge, no new identity to perform, just the absence of something that shouldn't have been there. If you want a single metric to know whether this is working, use this one. Notice how often you leave an interaction without thinking about it afterward. No replay, no justification, no cleanup. When that starts happening consistently, sovereignty has been restored. If you want to verify this without forcing change, use a 7-day window. For 1 week, don't try to say no more often.
Just observe when agreement happens before thought. Each automatic yes is a data point. Each pause is a correction. You're not changing behavior. You're reading the structure as it reveals itself, not as an idea, as a condition. And conditions, once set correctly, don't require effort to maintain. They simply hold. At this point, you may notice something subtle but decisive. Your responses arrive later. Not slower, later. There is a gap now between stimulus and action, and in that gap, choice has room to exist again. Nothing dramatic fills it, no surge of confidence, no rehearsed firmness, just space. This is how you know the correction has taken hold. You are no longer reacting to momentum, you are initiating from presence. Requests don't feel like interruptions, they feel like information. Some you accept, some you don't. And neither decision leaves a trace. This is the clearest sign that jurisdiction has been restored. Not the ability to say no, but the absence of residue after saying either yes or no. Your nervous system stops preparing for follow-up. Your mind stops carrying unfinished interactions forward. The system has learned something quietly but permanently. Access is conditional, and conditions are evaluated in real time. From here, effort drops out of the equation. You don't need reminders, you don't need rules, you don't need vigilance. Structure is doing the work. This is what being sovereign actually feels like. Not control, not assertion, but the absence of silent obligation. Nothing leans on you. Nothing preloads your choices. Your will operates inside its own jurisdiction again. And when structure holds,
It no longer needs to defend itself. It simply operates. That is the end state. Not empowerment, not distance, not control, but clean authorship over your actions, and the quiet relief of no longer spending it in advance.